Guys, believe it or not, if you stick with us today, we're going to tell you why refinancing might make sense for you.
You better get fired up.
Who in their right mind would think that refinancing, when rates have gone from between 2 and 4% up to maybe 7 or 8, Nate, you can tell me here in a second, who would think that refinancing would make sense? But there are some scenarios where it would make sense, and Nate is going to share those with us today. Nate, I appreciate you joining me, my man. How you doing this beautiful Friday?
Hey, I'm great, Joe. I appreciate being here. And yeah, it does sound a little bit ludicrous to talk about refinancing when rates are so much higher today than they were 2 or 3 years ago. But I'm going to show you why, for the right people, it makes no sense not to do it. You have to.
So let's start off with rates. Where roughly are rates? And I know that's a loaded question because it depends on 83 different things, but where roughly are rates right now?
Your standard vanilla conventional conforming loan, somebody that's middle of the road, not the best, not the worst, is probably going to be mid to high 7s, I would say.
Okay. And that seems pretty typical. I'm seeing a lot of people, because of the higher rates and wanting the lower rates, I'm seeing a lot more people pay points to get their rate lower. Is that something you're seeing or trending?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're doing a lot of permanent rate buy downs, which is when it happens up front and sticks for the entire duration, and then temporary buy downs, which stair step for either 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. Yeah.
So I'm getting a little off topic here, but I'm so genuinely curious in this. When you go to get a loan and you're going to pay points to get your rate lower, are you telling them the break-even point on when it will have made sense?
I am, yeah. So I look at what the difference in the payment is, and then what the cost of buying that rate down is. And we have a simple formula that says after X number of payments, you're basically, in the red. I'm sorry, out of the red, but into the green. So I look at it with them, and if it makes sense for them, for example, if you're going to be in that green in 2 or 3 years, and you have no expectation that you're going to move, that probably makes sense. I mean, even if you did move 5 years, 7 years, 10 years later, you still took advantage of that, and it made sense. If you know, for example, that you're not going to be in a particular house for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and we look at it, I'm going to say, hey, it doesn't make sense. Let's not do it.
So guys, what Nate is saying is, let's just say your rate is 7.5, whatever Nate tells you your rate's going to be, right? And I think just about any lender can do this, right? Yeah. If your rate is 7.5%, but you're thinking, I really wanted to stay under 7, Nate will likely come back and say, hey, if you pay X amount of dollars based on this, information I'm getting from these lenders, we can get your rate to whatever it is you want. Let's say it's 6 7/8. We can get your rate down there, but it's going to cost you X amount of dollars in points. You're paying down points, right? And then that's just added to your closing costs. So then the question is, what's more important to you? Cash in pocket, right? With, you're going to have a higher rate over time, or getting that rate down, which lowers your payment, but it's going to cost you more money up front. Yeah. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but strictly from a financial standpoint, a great lender like Nate is going to share with you when that break-even point is, so you can essentially say, hey, if you stay in the house for this amount of months or this amount of years, financially speaking, it would make sense to get the rate buy down, right? But if you don't, it wouldn't. What is that break-even point typically looking like?
For most people, it's going to be probably at least 36 payments. So we're looking most of the time, it's going to be about a 3-year break even. It really depends on how aggressive somebody wants to get with that buy down. And of course, it's driven a lot by what the purchase price is as well. Yeah. There's been some instances where it's been a little over a year, and there's been other instances where it's been, 4 or 5 years. But if it makes sense for that person, if they know they're going to be there for 10 years, it still makes sense, because half of that time you're in that house, you're saving money every month.
Okay, so let's start talking about refinancing right now, right? I'll tell you right now, and I'm bragging because I'm happy about it, man. I got a 2.25% rate. Rates right now, you're telling me, are maybe mid 7s, somewhere thereabouts, depending upon my situation.
Yep.
What in the world would make me want to refinance and lose that 2.25% rate?
That's a great question, and I can give you a specific example. I had a client, and I bookmarked this so that we could talk about it, that had the very same conversation with me. Her rate was at 3.625%. and she wanted to see what her options were. And I said, look, I don't know, how closely you've been following what's going on these days, but rates are high. Like, you're not going to cut that down.
No.
But let's look at what your total payments look like in terms of everything else that you have going on. And if you don't mind, let's do a little bit of work together on looking at your revolving debts, your auto debt, everything. Let's look at it all. And she said, sure. So we looked at everything. So her balance on her mortgage was $265,000 at 3.625%. And then we went and looked, and she had credit card payments that totaled up to about another $120,000 all in.
Dang.
Crazy. I mean, there's a lot of people that carry that amount of debt.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. So we looked at what her blended rate was. And so between the mortgage and all of the credit cards, she was looking at $386,000. $386,000 that she was carrying a debt on. And then I said to her, hey, pull out your credit card statements and read me off what those interest rates are. So I've documented that as well.
Here's the scary part. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're all north of 20. In her case, they were all north of 20.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we looked at it and I said, okay, let's look and see what we got here. So between the mortgage and the credit card payments, we blended the rate. Her rate of payment on $386,000 was a blended rate of 9.645.
Yep.
And then I came back to her and said, hey, let's just chat about what your credit card history looks like. I'm going to make some assumptions based on how much debt you have, that you're probably not paying the cards off. You're making the minimum payments.
Yeah.
And she said, that is what I'm doing. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about that for a second. The average number of payments that you would have to make in order to pay that card off equate to about a 23-year term.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, a credit card, even just one credit card, but in her case, multiple credit cards.
Yeah.
She has a 23-year low balance, high interest mortgage that she's paying minimum payments on every single month. So I said to her, why do you want to lower your rate? Like you called me and that was the objective. Why do you want to lower your rate? Well, I'm looking for ways to save money. And I said, well, obviously, let's see what we can do. So we went through the exercise and I showed her where if we refinanced her house and pulled out, she had tons of equity. She had lived there for a while. Let's pay off all of these cards. Let's refinance your mortgage. Your rate's going to go up, sorry, but you're going to essentially be debt-free. She didn't have an auto loan or anything. It was just these credit cards and she was making minimum payments. And we got her into a 7.375 rate. And at first, again, her eyes got real big, Joe. I reminded her that she's currently paying 9.6% and she's going to be debt free. And a couple of things I explained to her, I talked a little bit about how she basically has to make 23 years of minimum payments to pay those credit cards down. But there's two things that are working against somebody that's taking that approach to credit card debt. And the first one is you're paying significantly more interest on those because your interest rate on those, like I said, in her case, is all of them are north of 20%.
Yeah.
And they're smaller balances. So if you're making your minimum payments of, $150, $200, whatever it is, sure, you're paying the principal down by that much, but then you're also paying interest on everything that's left. Yeah. So that's not working in your advantage. And then the second thing is when you're carrying high balances on credit cards like that versus your credit limit, that impacts your credit score. Yeah. And so what happens when these credit card companies do their refresh that they all do a couple times a year, if not at least once or twice a year, they're seeing that your score is dropped. So two things happen from that. They raise your interest rate and they decrease your credit line, right? So it's just this compounded thing. You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. Carrying a ton of credit card debt screws you because your payments aren't going to really chew into that balance as much because you're paying some insane amount of interest. Yeah. But then all along, your credit's taking a hit because your utilization's through the roof. They're dropping your credit line, which makes that utilization even tighter and tighter. It's like this never-ending cycle. So if you're in a situation like this lady, it makes no sense not to do that.
Nate, do you do HELOCs?
Yeah, we do HELOCs.
Okay. So guys, if you're in that position, obviously you can see how the math crunches out and you can get rid of loads of high interest debt, and credit cards are probably the worst example of that. But if you want to be proactive and you're not yet in that situation, but you can see for whatever reason, man, life happens that you're about to take on some massive debt and your option is probably going to be credit cards. Give Nate a call, and instead of doing a refi, which is a good answer if you're already in that boat, you can do a HELOC. And now a lot of times your rate is going to be better on a HELOC than it's going to be on a 20, 25, 30% credit card. And he can help you in that way too. I honestly I've learned my lesson. If I ever have something I'm trying to do financially, I just call Nate and I say, dude, this is what I'm trying to do. Am I best in the situation I'm already in, or is there something else I should be looking at? And Nate will tell me either you're good or, hey, I would consider this. Let's crunch the math. But what you're saying is incredibly helpful, man.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for us to see people that are drowning in credit card debt like this.
Yeah. What percentage of people who come to you for a loan, regardless of the type of loan it is, have, let's say, $10,000 in credit card debt or more?
I would say it's the majority. There are very
Really?
few people we talk to that have limited debt. Most of the people we talk to absolutely have a fair amount of revolving credit card debt and other things for sure.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
You know, when I hand you a client, I don't really ask a lot of questions unless there's a reason for me to get involved with the financial end of it. So it's so interesting to me to hear that. To hear that. Wow. What percentage of your business would you say is regular, VA, FHA, conventional home loans versus HELOCs or refis?
So my business is primarily going to be purchase business. So when I look back at my volume over the last 3 or 4 years, 15% of that business has been either a home equity line or a refinance. And then the other 85% is purchase, new home business. But I've got a lot of people that work with us that have an inverse of that, where they don't do as much purchase business and their primary business is going to be the refinance and the home equity line. So in the mortgage business, it really just depends on which side you want to play.
Yeah.
It's not often that you find somebody that kind of has a 50-50 split on purchase and refi.
Yeah.
If you're a purchase guy like me, you're working with real estate agents primarily. So that's going to be where I'm drawn versus going to the consumer and doing the refinances. But there's a lot of mortgage people that do the opposite. Like I said, they don't really work that well with real estate agents. They work primarily with the direct to consumer approach. So everybody's going to have their niche. We definitely do that on our team. And I've done a lot of refis, but mostly it's been purchases.
So I pulled my HELOC before I met you. And just so everybody knows what HELOC is, it's a home equity line of credit, right? HELOC. And really, the way I look at it is it's a credit card. You can use it anywhere, do anything. In fact, you can get cards and checks for it.
Yeah.
But it starts out at a zero balance.
Yeah.
And you just run things up if you need, and it's an open line of credit. But it's based on or backed by the equity that you've got in your house. So generally speaking, it's going to be better than a credit card. Now, I've seen a credit card or two that are better, but it's the likelihood of a HELOC being better than a credit card is pretty dang good.
Yep.
So for me, my rate is prime plus, whatever. I forget what it is, right? And if I remember correctly, I think right now that puts me around an 8 to 10% rate. I can't remember what it is. Now, I'm not saying 8 to 10 is a wonderful rate either, but it's better than 20, 30% on a credit card. And I've got 15 years where that is open. Is 15 years common, and is prime plus common, or can you get flat rate HELOCs?
Yeah. So a lot of the credit card or home equity line of credits rather are built off of prime plus. So prime is going to be a number that anybody can search. You can type, what is the prime rate? I haven't kept up as much with where prime has moved with some of the shifts, but 3 months ago, not even, it was, 8.25. So if your equity line is prime plus, you're probably at least at an 8.5, if not to the 10, like you said. As prime gets better, you're going to find that the rate on that's also going to decrease, right? Because it's that the plus is a fixed margin. Prime is a variable. So if you're prime plus a quarter, prime plus one, that quarter or that one is going to be static. And then as prime comes down, that'll come down too.
That makes
But
sense.
typically a home equity line is built on either a 15, 20, or 30-year window. And then a period of time, it's going to be interest-only payments, which essentially is what a credit card is as well, which is why it takes so dang long to pay them off.
Yes.
And then there's also going to be a part of that you can convert to a fixed payment.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest that a lot of people convert to fixed payments today just because prime is as high as it is. If prime comes back down and you converted it to a fixed, you're basically out of luck.
Yeah. Yep. That makes complete sense. So I heard you say what prime was. I had to go look it up. What do you think it is?
A couple of months back, it was 8.25.
And it's 8.5 now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
that's interesting. So would I be correct in saying, because I don't watch prime, I know what prime is, but I don't watch it. Say 3-4 years ago when rates were around 3%, was prime around 3%?
No, it was lower.
It was lower. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So when they talk about raising the Fed rate, which they've done a lot lately, that is not prime, correct? Or is
not
it?
the same? The two things influence one another, but they're not the same. So if the Fed's raising the Fed fund rate, again, they call that the overnight rate. That's the rate at which the banks are borrowing from their Federal Reserve.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So in Florida, our banks are borrowing from the Federal Reserve in the regional of Florida. So that's the rate that they borrow their money from to remain liquid.
I guarantee we lost every single person watching this because I'm just nerding out on this stuff right now. But
nobody has any idea what we're talking about.
Listen, this stuff is so interesting. And once you start, like, obviously, I don't know the depths of all this stuff either. But once you just start having a little bit of curiosity and asking some questions, it opens up so many doors and so many windows into your mind and different things you can do. And like you said, man, I've got to imagine, of course, you're in it to make money. This is a business for you. But I've got to imagine it feels pretty rewarding when you help a gal like that who's got that incredibly high credit card debt, and she's got multiple payments she's got to make every single month.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you come and save the day, man. And it's all backed by the house. I mean, that's got to feel pretty amazing.
Yeah, she was pretty stoked. I remember at closing when she actually saw how much her total payment was. She was shocked again, but I had to remind her, you've just paid off all of this debt. So instead of you making your mortgage payment plus, I think it was like $1,500 or $1,600 a month in credit card payments, now you just have this mortgage payment. And then you could like see the light bulb go off again. She was like, oh yeah, okay.
So how much? Okay, so you said roughly $1,500-$1,600 in credit card monthly payments. What did you add to her mortgage payment?
I don't remember what the exact number was, but I do remember that her savings overall was somewhere in the $1,800 range a month. So I told her that $1,800, two things not to do with that. Two things not to do with, I'm sorry, not 1,800. It was 900.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That makes a lot more sense.
Nope, sorry. It was 900.
Dude, 900 is huge.
No. Yeah, $900. So I explained to her, hey, this isn't $900 for you to go spend. What I want you to do with this $900 is keep paying it toward your principal. So you have an extra $900 in your pocket right now. If you keep throwing that at principal, you're going to reduce the amount that you owe on your house. And then when you do need to refinance again at some point, whether rates are higher or lower, let's not get into that, but you're not going to have to refinance as much.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So I'm going to nerd out a little bit more. Average salaries in Florida as of a month ago were $33,877. We're going to say $34,000, right? And you save that gal 900 times 12, it's 10,800. When I do that math, you just saved her just shy of a third of an annual income, an average annual income.
Yeah.
Right. So that's 4 months of income that you just saved, assuming she's making average wages. You just saved that woman.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a life changer, man. That's a game changer right there.
For sure. And that's why I'm always telling everybody, buying a house is more than just kind of getting yourself off, the rental rip. You're putting
Yes.
yourself in a situation where you can use the equity in your house
Yes.
to accumulate more wealth.
Yep.
Right. So the more houses that you have, I'm not suggesting everybody, just drops what they're doing and starts investing in real estate if that's not something you can financially handle. If you can, you should. But the house that you own now, or the house that you will own, if you do things the right way, you can leverage that house to get you even more equity, to get you even more wealth, to help you stay out of debt. It's a tool, a mortgage. It's not, I don't look at a mortgage as something that, is something you carry on your back. It's a tool that you use.
Yep. Yep. That's beautiful, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you sharing this with everybody. This is, like I said, I realize we're running a business here, right? I got to sell houses. You got to sell loans. I get all that. But when you can change people's lives, it's pretty dang inspiring, and it's pretty dang rewarding as someone who's in those shoes to be able to do that for somebody. So it's cool to hear that story. And I guarantee somebody listening today has an immense amount of credit card debt with high rates. If you've got questions and you just want Nate to run the scenario, worst thing he'll say is, hey, you just wasted 15, 20 minutes. And my answer is, I can't help you. But if he can save you hundreds of dollars every single month by putting that into your home and refining, I mean, that's a complete game changer for you. So, Nate, I appreciate you coming on, my man. Thank you, especially on a Friday. I hope you have an amazing weekend. And guys, if you need anything, you can reach out to Nate or myself, and we'll definitely take care of you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.